the quality is not enough. The Italian or the European company, sometimes they don't have enough time, money, energy to focus on this market.
Joining me in the hot seat today, we have Paola Pavan. So Paola spent 5 years at the Italian trade agency supporting Italian wine and spirits producers to expand in the US. Now she operates her own agency, helping European food and beverage brands to enter and understand the US market.
There's a lot of possibility for functional drinks and ready-to-drinks too. Ready-to-drinks can be also based on wine, so that could be another way for wineries to sell.
So Paola knows everything about the US market, the main trends, how the market is going, what works and what doesn't, and especially what every brand needs to do to successfully enter the market.
A lot of distributors have been buying each other, and so in some states it looks like a monopoly. You have distributor that has portfolio of 10,000 SKUs, and they have competition among themselves.
I think this is a super important episode for anyone that's considering expanding to the US to understand how the market works and especially how they can practically enter it. Hey Paola, welcome on Dolia
Hi
Talks.
Giovanni, thank you for having me here.
So I would like to start from your experience and how you got into the US market. So you were working for the Italian trade agency, or ITA, and then you decided to actually launch your own consulting company for brands that export from Italy to the US and Europe in general. So could you maybe give us a bit of an overview of why you thought this was an opportunity and what you saw in the market that made you think actually brands would need this kind of support from people like you?
Well, let me just get 1 second back. Like when I came to the US, I worked with some importers in the, importers of wine and spirits. And then I got this opportunity in the Italian Trade Commission. And I thought it was like a great opportunity because they were having a big promo, like a big campaign of 3 years, $20 million. And I thought that I never worked in a big budget like that. So there was a lot of things involved. And to me, it was like, I'm going to learn the market really well. But after that, the campaign finished and, and a few years more of doing the daily routine in each, I wanted something more. I wanted something different. I was always an entrepreneur, so it was easy for me to say, okay, my experience here is done, and let's move forward. And when I moved forward, there was also the COVID, etc. There was a lot of things going on, but the opportunity was there in the sense that the Italian or European companies that I'm now focusing on, they needed a support not just on an institutional overview side, but also on some more hands-on help. I saw the opportunity because I see that there can be a lot of education. You can learn a lot through podcasts, through videos about how the market works, but having somebody that really guides you, walk you through, it's more important, and there's not a lot of people that do that.
And as you also said, I think the US is one of the top, is the top market for brands and beverage brands in particular. I speak to a lot of them, and even the smaller ones like tell me, look, man, yeah, I want to, the first market we want to crack is actually the US because it's the biggest one, it's the one where we have the most opportunities. So maybe I would like to use your expertise to draw a bit of a picture of this market and also maybe help those that know it a bit less in learning how it looks. So one thing I would like to start from is the market vitals in general. So in Europe, we see a lot of the alcohol consumption is declining. Young people are switching a bit more towards non-alcoholic or alternative drinks. So how does the market in general look in the US in terms of consumption and in terms of like how consumers look?
Okay. Well, consumption is, as you said, unfortunately, the statistics are that we are drinking less. But overall, the US market could be like, between alcoholic and non-alcoholic, could be like 300 billion something like that. It's huge. We always need to think that that is a market that is very fragmented systematically, because there's the 3-tier system, so each state works separately, but also based on the personalities and then traditions and everything that, you know, the people that lives here. Like, I live in New York. New York is completely different from Houston, from Los Angeles, and Miami. And we are just talking about big cities. You know, I've probably, you know, the most rural things that I see here is like Pennsylvania and New Jersey. I've never been in the Midwest so far, because business wise, there's nothing to do. But as a curiosity, I really would like to go and see also those places, because they give you another type of America that, you know, we're not that used to. So going back, it's very fragmented. The distribution is messy right now, because, you know, we have the 3-tier system, but basically a lot of distributor have been merging between, you know, buying each other. And so in some states you really have, like, looks like a monopoly, 2 or 3 big distributor that distribute almost everything that is in the market. And what does that mean is that you have distributor that has list portfolio of 10,000 SKUs, like 10,000 products. And these 10,000 products, they have competition among themselves. Like, I used to work for Mionetto, is like the second best Prosecco in the US. And they had like the 2-3 major distributor for each state, depending on which one was the most powerful in that state. But the same distributor has also the first most sold Prosecco in the market, plus other 15 Proseccos that were maybe not that known, but for whatever reason they arrived there. And so what does that mean is that the distributor is not really pushing any brand. The sales rep of the distributor is going to go there and say, okay, what do you want? Prosecco, okay, I have 10, 15. Which one do you want? And then the guy is going to choose depending on if he's a person that really knows about the product, which happens in big cities like New York, etc. There's like very geeky people that wants to give to their client like the best that they think is whatever they think is the best. But then you go to the other cities, and you get into the liquor store, and they don't have any tradition on, you know, what to drink. And so they rely on what the customer wants. And what the customer wants are big brands that has the name for them to recognize. So going back to, because I don't want to sound like very negative, it's a huge market, it's very fragmented, but if you go step by step, you can still make good progress, good business. The only thing is to understand that each state, each city is going to be a different battlefield and a different battle plan. So you need to focus on the strategy and, most importantly, the execution. Because since I moved here in the US, Made in Italy is very important. Product from Italy, they know that they are amazing and they're very good, but the quality is not enough. There's a lot of marketing, a lot of sales, and a lot of execution to be done to be successful here. And most of the time, what breaks is really like the execution. The fact that the Italian or the European company, sometimes they don't have enough time, money, energy to focus on this market.
So, as you said, there's a lot of competition. What does the competition look like? Is it like US-based brand? Is it other European brands like French producers? Or which are the main European countries or other products that are mostly represented in the US?
Well, I would say for wine, the main competitor for the Italians is the France. Like when I was working in the Italian Trade Commission, we were doing the the statistics, and we were always like neck to neck, like, always. But the good thing about France compared to Italy was that even if the value was more or less the same, they were doing less quantity. So that meant that their average price was higher than the Italian. And that was, at least till 5 years ago, it was well established in the sense that the Italians, for whatever reason, not only maybe the market was a little giving them less compared to the French ones, but also the Italian people were not pushing and were not positioning themselves as the French producers. So that was also like, okay, maybe the market could have given them more, but they were not, for whatever reason, they were not going and grabbing it. Right now we see that at least for the wine, everything went up, and not just for the tariff. This was something that happens like in the previous year before the tariff started. But for whatever reason, everything became very, very expensive. Drinking in a restaurant now is, at least in New York, is almost impossible. Like the prices are super high. Like a glass of wine is $20 minimum. And so it's a lot. Going back to what you are asking, compare between Europe and US, I would say for the spirits, we definitely have a lot of US. And we definitely have a lot of other countries, because we know how important tequila is here in the US. So, Mexico cracked the code, or some Americans cracked the code for the US. For the Mexicans. Because what I can tell you also is that a lot of the trends, even the imported trends like the tequila, etc., are still created by American, not by the Mexicans, not by the Italians. The most sold Italian wines in the US are owned by American companies. And that shows, like, confirm that it's not just about the product, because of course the product is good. They come to Italy to get it. Okay, so it's made in Italy is a good, but how do they become successful? How do they scale? How they become the first seller, the best seller in the market? They have the marketing, they have the distribution, and they have a lot of money. They know what the consumer wants, and they just give it to them.
So if, let's say, I'm a young Italian producer and I'm looking to export to the US, I mean, it seems really difficult. I mean, I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of someone that's starting. I'm not sure if I would go forward with this.
No, I tend to be very honest and very brutal,
Yeah.
because I know that there are opportunities here, but you really need to come prepared with the mindset. We need to remember something here in the US that I don't know if it's something that is going to happen in Europe or not. That's very difficult for me to understand right now that I live in the US. But in the US, we have an access to capital that I've never seen before. And that doesn't mean that you have to be American to have the access to the capital. That could also be from other companies, like, maybe companies that arrive with the structure, with a business plan, with the ideas, with the right people. They can get money, they can get investors here. I spoke with some companies that do investing in beverage, because they were actually looking for a person like me to help them with the wine sector, because they're like, we have a lot of projects with other beverages, we don't have any project with wine. And they were asking why. And I think that why is that unless you are American and then you understand the market here, there was always a difficulty. I'm not talking just Italians, because probably they never saw any project from Italy. They were asking me like Australian, South African, big companies, that they were looking for investments, but then they didn't have the mindset to deal with those investments. Like, they were getting the money and they were using the money in strategies that for the investor were not interesting. But, let's going back. We have access to capital that probably you don't have in Europe. So what can you do for the US market if you're starting? You start small, but you start very focused. You start with finding the first importer in a state and work from that. With that, optimize the state. That's what I was when I started my company. This is what my strategy was for my clients. It was like, okay, I was not usually starting with people that don't have any distribution because the market was not allowing much coming in of new product. But if you had one state or two states that you were selling like just even a pallet, you were in the market, you knew a little how to export, what is the COLA registration, like how do you register your label, or like all the compliance, you know a little how the market works, but you're selling little stuff. So now you have two options. You stay like that and maybe you're fine. Or you try to implement and sell more. Okay. To sell more, you need strategy, you need marketing and sales. Not just sales, not just marketing. If they don't go together, you lose. I saw a lot of big companies from Italy arriving with a lot of nice marketing products, distribution flopped because they were not going together. And the distribution is the American part. So you also need to work a lot with the American part for them to sell you. Because if you remember what I said before, they're not selling you. They're just getting the shopping list. So you need to be there, like for example, Mionetto and all the big brands that are in the US, they don't only rely on the distributors. Every state has at least one sales manager that works with the distributor and works with the biggest account. So the biggest account are, you go directly. You don't go, maybe then you get the order, you give it to the distributor. That's what you need to pay to have the distribution, to have somebody that backs you up. But you have somebody there that go with a client and get the relationship with the client. So if you are in one or two states, then you can create something to optimize the state, like start selling a little more, putting together these strategies and these little tricks that help you sell more. And then you go to another state and you prove with that your concept work, because you say, this is what we are doing in the other states. Could we do it also in your state with you? This is what we're bringing. We're bringing this marketing, we're bringing this support, we're bringing these strategies. And then you can grow. But still, you need to understand how big your company can be, because it could be that a company from Italy, after they have 3 or 4 states, they don't have enough wine to give to more states. So before we were talking about huge companies that I work with a company for a gin. They had $10 million budget of marketing. So we don't have those numbers for sure. Italians don't have those numbers.
I think it's the annual revenue of most Italian companies.
Yeah, I would
10
say
million.
so.
So from what you said and from what I understood, maybe we could say it makes sense to have we could call it like a minimum viable presence before like starting to expand. So find a smaller distributor, sending 1-2 pallets and see how the market goes, and then expand from that basis. So that's a bit.
Yes.
We can summarize it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, it's still doable, not for everybody. Like there's going to be product that cannot enter in the market right now. Product that are too obscure. We still like the niche, but it has to be, the niche for the wine still needs a lot of education. Like most of my 5-6 years in Italian trade agency, and most of the things that I see around me here in New York and in the US is still education heavy for wine. So the consortia come and they do a master class, conference, and this and that is all about education, because these people know Chianti and Prosecco and, they know the basics, but New York knows more than Miami for sure. There's California might know more because they also have the wine production there. But you could be surprised of how much wine Chicago or other part of Florida drinks without knowing anything about the wine. But then what do they drink? Then maybe they drink one glass of Italian and 10 glass of Cabernet Chardonnay. How do we get a couple of glasses of Chardonnay coming to Italian wines? That's the challenge, because it's education or it's branding. Prosecco was able to do that because it creates the category, or there was the space in the category for the sparkling wine to have the Prosecco there, and some major brands were able to establish the market for also the smaller ones.
Hey listeners, just a quick interruption from me just to say that if you're liking the show, if you think the guest is great, or if you think that the episode is being useful, consider subscribing to the show on your favorite platform and leaving us 5 stars and a comment on Spotify. That's really the easiest way to help me grow the show and to bring even more amazing guests in the future. Do you think in general it still makes sense for, I'm thinking, like a smaller producer with not a lot of budget from one of the less known appellations? I mean, is it a move that makes sense to actually go to the US, given what you are describing, that most probably people don't know anything about your wine, so maybe it's not as appealing as it is in the local market?
Going through the traditional path, probably not. Or unless I experienced like personally being in Tuscany before I moved to the US, and just pouring wine for the winery that I was working with in a local, how do you say, street fair, like the Sagra di Paese. And and having a guy start talking about wine, and I'm like, oh, this guy knows. And and then the day after he comes to the winery and he's like, I'm an importer and I want to import your wine. It could happen. It still could happen. So it still could happen that an American importer that has the right city where he can, spice up the city by bringing something that nobody knows and is able to sell it, that could still happen. But if you want to push it, it's going to take a long time to find a person that will say yes, because they might not be open for that. So it's all about this is something that I see all the time. Also, this idea that I told you, that marketing and sales needs to go together, and you need to have a strategy, is that even if your product is amazing, what you need to understand in the US, but I think also in Europe, and you tell me what you think about this, is that if you don't create the demand for that specific product, you're not going to sell it. And creating a demand is not just like positioning and having a lot of marketing. It's not just having investing a lot of money. Creating demand could means that you understand what your product, especially for spirits, for example, what your product is different from the other in a cocktail, for example. And then you get a couple of people, bartenders, etc., that get in love with your product, and they use it in one or two cocktails in their place, and you can sell a lot of product. For an Italian, you can sell a lot of product. I had friends that sells wine that tells me this restaurant makes 75% of what I export in New York, because the sommelier is so in love with my wine that he's selling to everybody that comes inside the restaurant. It is possible, but you need to find, if you cannot find the whole market, you have to find a couple of people, and for of course the importer needs to believe a lot in your product, and then you need to find a couple of people that are going to drive the demand of your product.
So probably could make sense if someone is really, I mean, keen on actually opening the US market and just brainstorming. Maybe instead of looking from the beginning for distributors, maybe you could start looking for maybe sommeliers at some nice restaurants or experts, or in general people that are involved in the trade, but not necessarily the ones that actually import your wine. Maybe just to start actually bringing the name on the market and making yourself a bit more known. And I'm thinking, so maybe you can also organize a journey to the US. You go there a couple of weeks, meet some people. That's probably, I think, the less traditional way, no?
Yes, it's less traditional and it could work, but there's always all the, how we say here, all the duck needs to be on the roll. So like you can find somebody that gets in love with with your product, and then he's not able to bring it here. So I tell you this story because it's very fun, just to make you understand that having somebody that likes your product sometimes doesn't arrive to selling the product. So I have a brand that I'm working with. They sell a lot in the US, and they have a very important, very popular bar here in New York that buys their product, but their product is not in the menu. So the sales rep one day is like, you guys, you buy like 2-3 cases, every couple of weeks. What are you doing with my product? Like it's not in, it's not in any cocktail. And they're like, we drink it. Like the people that works here drink it. Because we like it, but we're not. But for whatever reason, they are not able to put it in their bar. It could be because they have exclusivity with other brands. It could, because that is something that happens very much.
Okay.
That is something that closed the doors for a lot of smaller brands. Is that
Wow.
the big distributors, they go and they are like, okay, we give you these deals, but these are the brand that you can buy. Okay, so. Yes, you can have people that drink your wine, but but sometimes they're not going to be able to make the market for you anyways. So yes, I would say that even if even if you find somebody that is interested in your product, that definitely helps because he can put you in touch with importers and distributor, etc. You need to be lucky to start like that.
You mentioned consortia before. Do those actually play a role, especially for like the smaller appellations or the lesser known brands in structuring like a bit the promotion, marketing, and the market entry? So do you see actually consortia help on this side?
They work a lot with education, which is good, but usually they do a couple of cities. If they come in the US, they usually come to New York, and then maybe they do another city. And they have certain amount of budget that they can use, and I see that a lot of the people that goes are the people that really are into education. They want to learn a lot about wines, and they can also push some of these wines, but it's more like we said before, the sommelier enjoy going and drinking those wine, but then it's not that sure that they are going to be able to work with those wines. And the good and the bad of the consortia or the association and also the Italian Trade Agency is that you give the opportunity for the appellation to be known. You give sometimes the opportunity to the producer to be known, because sometimes they also come and they do maybe a little work around tasting, etc. But then it falls short in the sense that a lot of these producers don't have distribution. So even if they're amazing, the people that are there are not going to be able to buy them directly. And if the producer are not there, then I feel like the budget that you invest in these kind of project. It's not optimized. When I was working in ICE, and this is something that me coming from corporate, coming from companies, I was always like thinking of the return of investment of what we were doing. And I'm like, and I was frustrated because I couldn't calculate the return on investment of all the things that we were doing, mostly because it was like public money that was used for a certain amount of producers, but then the producer, and this is something that I feel like the Italians really miss, and they make a mistake also. And I think it's not just the Italian. I experience it also for other countries. Is that if you do a trade show that is half paid or even almost full paid by the government, and you don't give something back as a data, as something like a feedback of what happened, if you got business, if what could have been better, then you're losing the possibility, because we don't know if it was good or bad. And next year, I'm saying the government, next year you could say, oh, we keep putting money on this or not. Is it worthy or not? We don't know. I think that we're not really good at communicating if something works or not works without getting the critic in it, like, just saying, like, honestly, this is what worked, this is the result that we had, this probably didn't work so well, maybe next year we could do better. This communication is difficult, but it's the one that, here we all talk about validate the market. Means you need to come inside and you need to get the feedback from the market if your product will work or not. If you don't know how to get feedback or how to give feedback, makes the work more difficult.
Do you think you can do it even without a physical presence in the first phases? And just to explain myself a bit better, I was speaking to a person that helps European brands export to China, and he was saying many brands, what they do is they start with campaigns on social media even before having the product actually there. So maybe you can do some advertising on Instagram, on TikTok. I mean, in China, of course, it's different, but yeah, just to keep the usual names.
Yes.
You can start finding some influencers and doing some content with them, even without actually practically selling the wine in the US or in the country. Do you see this kind of approach can also work for smaller, younger, maybe a bit more pop brands?
Not sure, in the sense that, okay, right now we cannot do advertising or very limited advertising in social media for alcoholic. For the other beverage, I would say yes, it could work. I met some very nice brand that are now recognized in the US, that they told me when we started like 15, 20 years ago, we didn't have the product here. Like we had a very limited quantity here, but we were selling like everything, and they kept the limitation of the inventory because they wanted to get the premium feel. Like they were saying no to a lot of people, like you cannot have it because it's so important, so popular, that you cannot have it, and only selected restaurant and bars could have it. But in reality, it's because they didn't have the product. But they were able to play this game, and that worked really well for them. In the US, you can start with some gimmick, but I think it's more for non-alcoholic than alcoholic, I would say, because the distribution and everything makes it very, very difficult. Like also, like, just to give you an example, it's very difficult to get samples. It's like in Italy. So I know that also in Italy, if you use a bottle, etc., you need to still go in the registry and say, oh, I use this bottle for this, etc. So the same is here. So everything needs to be tracked and is less flexible than what you described in the US. For the non-alcoholic, yes. And I give you an example because it was so funny. There's a tea, I think it's a tea, like a iced tea. And they went to a city in the middle of nowhere that is called Arizona. Okay.
The city
And it's
Arizona,
like,
which okay.
yeah. prime city that was called Arizona. They go there with this truck with a lot of these cans, etc., and they start going around the city. But it's like literally like a small city in Italy, like. And they go in the bar and they're in the places whatever where they find people and they get them drink, and then at the end they create a commercial because they said that that was the best tea in Arizona. And in reality, it was like that little tiny, and I thought it was genius because it was so funny. So did they really have distribution? No, they got there with the buckets full of cans, but they were able to create something. Probably that is something that you do, that can be done. But then what is going to happen after that is for the non-alcoholic is that they might be getting distribution. For the alcoholic is not that straightforward.
Can we, let's say, summarize a bit everything that we said? And can we try and outline, let's say, the full process from start to end on how a European brand can actually export to the US? So from when I decide that I want to export to when actually my product is in the US.
Okay. Well, right now we're going to talk about like the traditional way because there can be some alternative ways, but they are very expensive. So I would say for the moment, let's just stick with what is the 3-tier system and so far what the possibility are. So the most important thing is to find a partner in the US. So I don't know if everybody knows, I can give like 3 seconds. The 3-tier system basically means that you have to have an importer that is at federal level is going to bring your product in. And then at the state level, you need a distributor. Sometimes it can be the same people in some states. Sometimes it has to be different people. So you have a distributor that sells in the state. And this is mostly because they want to collect taxes and they want to control what's going on in the alcohol system. So you need to get an importer. Hopefully, is also a distributor in the state where he's based. And so in that case, you just get two steps. And with that guy, you will be able to sell to the 3rd tier, which is restaurants and stores. Okay. And then that tier sells to the consumer. The consumer cannot go to a distributor or an importer to buy wine or whatever spirits. So to find this person, you can be lucky. You need to do a lot of cold calling. You can do trade shows, or you can work with people that are in the market that could be like some kind of broker or people that can help you get in touch with the importers. Once you start the import and you do all the logistic compliance nightmare, that is in reality is not that difficult. People get so caught up on the bureaucracy, but it's not that difficult. The most important part is when the product arrives here. Actually, before the products arrive here, that's where the strategy that you were talking about could work. Like not the product that doesn't exist, but the product that is about to arrive. You need to already start selling it, even if you don't have it in a warehouse. The most important thing, as I said, is find where the demand of your product is. And if there is no demand, either you create it or you're not going to be successful. I give you an example. Right now, I'm talking with a Amaro producer. I was talking with people that works in distribution, etc. And they are like, Paola, in a bar right now, there's 3 spots for an Amaro, not more than 3. And one is usually Averna, one is usually Fernet. So for another producer, you only have 1 spot. That is for all the producers that are in the US. And there are big brands already in the US. But you got a couple of brands or like a couple of tequilas that got like you have to have that tequila. And then you can also only have other 3 or 4 tequilas. That's how much the market can absorb. And that's where the competition really is fierce. And that's where you need to say, okay, you need to have my Amaro for this reason. And that has to get into the head of the person that is going to sell your Amaro to the consumer. And what else? I would say, to enter is like, these are the steps. Very, very simple and very complicated at the same time.
And on average, how much time and money does a process like this require?
If you have a product that makes sense, you can still get the possibility. Like, you can still find people that are going to import just a pallet to see how it goes. And that probably doesn't take that long. I have this Amaro that took like probably when he started working on the, I want to export in the US, it probably took 6 months, less than a year. There's people that I know that have been trying for 5 years and they haven't find the way of getting in. But that's more like wine. I think that there's a lot of possibility for functional drinks, a lot, and ready to drinks too. Ready to drinks can be also based on wine, so that could be another way for wineries to sell wine. I know a couple of ready to drink wine that are doing good. Like, of course, they're not becoming brand like American brand, but for being European product, they're doing good. They have distribution in all the top states because, let's be honest, there's 10 states that are doing most of the business. And then you have the second 10 states that are still helping you, other 30 states that you don't really need. But if you find somebody in those states, maybe you can make the market. Because I knew people in Indiana that they are like, okay, I do the market. The importer was like, I choose whatever I want and I make the market because nobody knows here.
You start small and then maybe you make yourself a bit known, you start social media, and then you go in the big ones.
There's a lot of opportunity for people that thinks outside the box.
Okay.
Even if there's the limitation of the legality, the thinking of outside the box works. Still can work.
And those brands you mentioned that are selling ready to drink, did they create the brand specifically for the US market? So it was like a new product only for the US?
No, I don't think
Okay.
so. There's a couple of Italian that lives outside of Italy that they know how to produce brands, like they know how to put together the recipes. But I think that they start selling in the UK, here, and probably also in Asia. Like, it was like not specific for the US.
Okay.
But the communication and the market is different in the US. When I was telling you about that brand that had 10 million for the US, it's a global brand of gin from Scotland. So very particular gin, not even like it was a niche gin. But they had a global marketing and communication campaign that was different from the US market. The US market had a completely different strategy. No, the product is the same, but the strategy is different.
Good. So I will move towards the final section of the interview. I would have 1,000 other questions, but we need to keep them in the schedule.
We can do part 2 next time.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's a good idea. So the final section, I call it Quickfire because I will ask you a couple of short questions, and I would like you to answer like the first thing that comes to mind as quickly as possible. So it's like a very quick exchange. So my first question would be, it's 2036, so it's 10 years from today. What do you think happened to the US market and also to European brands exporting to the US?
Looking at the future, I'm really like, I don't know what to think because what's going on with AI and everything. And I look at my daughter and I'm like, in 10 years, what's going to happen to her? But drinking wise, because we don't change so much, like, we still gradually, I think that we're going to follow the trend of still, unfortunately, drinking less alcohol, but definitely keep drinking a lot of other stuff. Like, I'll give you an example. Here, I and probably you, we grew up with water. We didn't drink a lot of sodas here. Here you don't drink water. Like people don't drink water. It's incredible. Like you have like all these water flavor. Like it cannot be like straight water. There has to be something in it. And of course it has to be like probiotics or this and that, but it's just to drink regular stuff that you drink 3, 4, 5 times a day. Like they're always with a can of something. So there's a lot. There's still a lot to drink. It's not just water. We're not going to go to water, at least here in the U.S. So there's going to be other possibility for other product for sure.
So I think you mentioned a couple in our conversation, but if you could say like one brand that everyone needs to go and check out how they approached the entering the US market, and now they're approaching, for example, also marketing and communication and distribution in the market. Just one or two names.
For the wine, I would say that probably you could have a look at the Prosecco in the sense of the whole consortia because they're doing good. And then specifically, even if are like older case studies to see how La Marca and Mionetto established themselves in the market because those are the two most important Prosecco in the US. For spirits, I would say that Amaro Montenegro is doing very good in the US, at least for the way I look at the market, the trade shows that I go, the event that I go, etc. Because I'm not in the street to see how much they sell, etc. But in terms of engaging the community, they're doing really good. Also, Cocchi, which is vermouth, it's very established in the US, and they have the community, the strong community of bartenders that helps them a lot with their positioning. If I can tell you, one of the wine that I was mentioning before that is owned by the US company but is Italian and sells a lot, and I think it still sells a lot, is it's not that good in my opinion, but it arrives to a certain part of the population in the US that really wants to drink those kind of wine. It's called Stella Rosa. So you can have a look
Okay.
at that. Those are like more wine like towards the sweet side, a little like simple, like, for people that really don't know anything about wine, but they still feel it's fancy to drink wine. So they're going to drink.
Okay.
A category that is huge in the US, which when I first came to the US and I was looking at the statistic and I was seeing it, white wine more or less at the same quantity of the red wine. I'm like, what are we talking about? Like, why is that? And then somebody introduced me to Pinot Grigio, and then I understood the
Okay. Okay.
Pinot Grigio, that's numbers that we cannot even imagine in
Wow.
the US. They sell a lot of Pinot Grigio. I don't know if you have Pinot Grigio in Italy because it might be just all here.
Wow. But why is that? I mean, is it because it's cheaper? Is it?
Because I think it's because they started with a good campaign like
Yeah.
many, many years ago. And I think it's a very easy it's a easy drinking wine, easy to understand also for the US market in the sense that they are used to have like new world taste. So Chardonnay, Cabernet, French varietals that are brought here in the US, and now the Californians are basically Cabernet and Chardonnay and Sauvignon, etc. So the Americans are used to one varietal, and if they like it, they keep buying it
Yeah.
because it's easy to remember. I like Chardonnay, I keep buying Chardonnay. I like Pinot Grigio, I keep buying Pinot Grigio. I don't have, so the blends are more difficult for them. And, this is a white wine, easy, not that expensive, and it really, people likes it a lot.
And so I would ask you the last question. And this is one I ask to every guest. It's more for myself than the listeners, but it's what's your favorite drink. Can be wine, can be another drink. I mean, what's your one that after this interview, maybe it's morning for you, but you will open the fridge and drink something?
I would say, and I think you are from Veneto
Yeah,
too, if
yeah.
I'm not wrong. I would say that at this point, after an interview like this, I just need a spritz with some friends and some chips, and
It was that tough, the interview. Come on.
no, it was not that difficult. But yes, I would say I
Yeah.
like white wines a lot more than red lately. Unfortunately, I think I'm getting. We need to be honest. We are in the industry, but we need to be honest. We also need to listen to our bodies,
Yeah.
and I feel like I can handle more like sparkling wine and white wines than the red wine, unless I'm on a dinner, for example. Definitely, I like spritz or easy drinking aperitivo. I start enjoying vermouth, also straight
Okay.
vermouth,
Yeah.
because it's interesting and it's still a wine. So, see, there's opportunity for wine. I don't like any of the sodas that they have here. I'm trying because I want to understand the market, but they always use these stevia or other substitute
Mm,
of sugar that for me give like a artificial taste that I cannot stand. So let's go with a straight spritz.
fantastic. Spirits. Then, Paola, it was a very great conversation. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.